Greetings, it is I, Chase, and I want to do a video about the Billy Carson situation that has been blowing up the last couple of days since the clips from that debate he had with Wesley Huff, who I have subscribed to now on his YouTube channel. His popularity has quite... So glory to God for that. I wanted to add some of my thoughts. Again, I mean, who am I? I'm a nobody. I'm just some dude who just, my humble little abode here in Central Texas, and I'm a Christian. I do evangelism here in San Antonio, and I attend a small little church, and that's about it. Anyways, I wanted to offer some of my thoughts for whatever they're worth on the Billy Carson situation. There's a couple things I want to say, and I'm going to use over the last couple of days, I've seen several YouTubers jump on this situation, and as I'm going to some of these guys I've never heard of, and one of them is called Life Reacts, Christian YouTuber. And he has hashtag, well, not hashtag, but at God Logic Apologetics. So, I watched his kind of reaction to what Billy Carson has just put out, which is really just making things worse for him. It's the dude just needs to admit that he just got blown to smithereens by an actual Christian historian. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So later in this video, I'm going to be using Life Reacts video of the Carson's 3-hour, I guess, damage control that he posted. I definitely don't want to listen to it. Not really all that interested in it, and so I hope Life Reacts doesn't mind me just using a few little areas in his because there's things that I was listening to Billy Carson say in these clips that he posted that I've really wanted to say something about. Again, for me as a Christian who does street evangelism, so obviously apologetics is kind of important as a Christian who does evangelistic work here in San Antonio, Texas. We go downtown, me and a couple of church buddies, we go downtown and we just try to share the gospel with people, hand out tracts and stuff, and just see how we can. It's been tough lately because it's been cold and wet down here in San Antonio, so we do it every Saturday afternoon. Anyways, I also have my tea here, which is still very hot right now, so we're gonna let that cool off a little bit. I'm wearing a hat, by the way. I don't normally wear a hat in my house, but I'm wearing a hat because my hair is being funky right now, so it looks very weird. All right, so thoughts. I want to start with saying, we have these things called presuppositions. You can't function without them. Everybody has them. Everybody's assuming something. When you wake up in the morning, you are already operating under the assumption of gravity, the basic laws of logic. You are not expecting to step out of your door and start floating up into the sky. And so logic, all that stuff, these are assumptions. Now those are given. However, there are other assumptions that we have that most people, the vast majority of people, are not really aware of and don't think about. Because they're not thinking about these, the assumptions, what will happen is these particular assumptions, which I will probably throughout this video interchange with the word worldview. These particular assumptions, if we're not aware of them and reflecting on them, a self-reflection on our own operating assumptions, presuppositions, they will begin to function subconsciously, and you won't even realize it. It's just not even, because it's not even on your radar. You're not thinking about your operating assumptions, and so, or your worldview perspectives. You're not thinking about, am I being consistent? Am I being epistemologically consistent in my analysis of these things and that, whatever. For me, for instance, because I am a Christian, I have a Christian worldview. Now, in the Christian worldview, there are also differences. You know, you got the Eastern Orthodox perspective, you got the Roman Catholic perspective. Of course, me, I'm from the Protestant world, the Protestant perspective. Um, and I lean more towards the Calvinistic perspective. Um, but, nevertheless, as a Christian with a Christian worldview perspective, whenever I listen to things, say for instance, Joe Rogan, who does not share my worldview. When I listen to Joe Rogan and when he was talking about subjects that I find fascinating on his podcast, I'm listening to it, and I'm listening to it, oh, my neck, consciously as a Christian with a Christian worldview. How would I, as a Christian, discuss these matters? Whenever I listen to other people, I listened to, and I wanted to talk about this, maybe I will at some point, Matt Walsh talking to, what's her name? She's a lesbian. She's kind of liberal, but she's not insane. Jillian Michaels, I think that's her name. And they were discussing marriage. What is marriage? Why can't homosexuals have marriage or anything like that? And that was, of course, her perspective. When I'm listening to this and I put myself in Matt's seat, how would I, as a Christian, respond to this? The Christian worldview perspective. It is at the center of how I live and I operate. I think of everything through the filters of my Christian worldview. And so there is in me I learned this from listening to James White for many years. I've watched a lot of his debates. I was very impressed with the way he handled his debates. He approached them with a presuppositional approach. What that means is he challenged the operating assumptions of his opponents, and he pretty much in every single one of his debates he would focus on the assumptions and demonstrating the inconsistencies of that perspective. That was how he would tackle his debates, and I was always really impressed with that. That really has influenced to this day the way I think. I'm always thinking about, whenever I hear somebody raising objections to my worldview, I'm immediately thinking about what is underlying the objection. Because there's the objection, but the objection's coming from something. It's rooted in something. And my goal is to get right at what the assumption is. Because very often the question is misleading, it's just improper, and it's because they're asking a leading question from an assumption that I'm like, I don't accept the premise of your question, you might say, in that way. So it is very crucial for us to recognize that we have these worldviews, and we think along these worldview lines. And so that's a little better. One of the problems with people today is, like I said, they're not paying attention to these things. They're not paying attention to their operating assumptions. And because they're not paying attention to these, they're not asking themselves the question, am I being consistent in my investigations? What are my methods? What are my, again, the epistemology? What is the methodology by which I determine what is truth and what is not? Joe Rogan, people like him, just don't think about these things. They don't consider these things. And I think one of the reasons why is because if you do, it is going to lead you down a road, which is going to lead you to the Christian worldview. But you see this regularly, and you're going to see it with Billy Carson here. And you saw it in his debate, his little debate that he had. I don't even consider that a debate, I consider that just a dialogue, but a dialogue between two different positions. But I guess you can call it something of a debate. When I hear about debate, again, I listened to a lot of James White's debates. They were formal debates. That's what I consider a debate. You have the opponent over here, you have your opponent over here, you have the moderator right in the middle, and this opponent you have the thesis, you have the antithesis, the affirmation, you have the negative, or the defense, you might say, and the prosecution in one sense, where the one defending the thesis offers their defense of the thesis. They're usually the one who starts in the debate, so they give It depends on how long they agree to the format, 15-minute long, 20-minute long. Sometimes I've even seen 30-minute long presentations of the defense. And then the other side steps up, uninterrupted, offers their claims against the defense and their arguments against what the defense or this guy is defending. And for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, what they agree on. And then they go into rebuttals. This side gets to rebut or this side gets to rebut what this side just proclaimed, so they get to try and challenge their argument. And then, that sometimes goes 10, 15 minutes, so they're asking questions. Cross-examination. That's my favorite part of the debates, by the way. And then it's the other side after their time is up. The other side's turn to do the same thing. Then you give your closing statements or stuff like that. That's what a formal debate is. That's definitely not what typically happens on YouTube these days. Usually the debate is it doesn't really have a format to it. It's just kind of two guys talking back and forth. Moderator steps in when he has to. That's typically what it is. But anyways, when we talk about our operating assumptions, for guys like Joe Rogan and Billy Carson, it is very clear to me after listening to some sections of the Billy Carson Wesley Huff debate. It is clear to me that Billy Carson has never thought about this before. Never thought about, how do I investigate? What's my methodology of investigation? How do I determine what, oral traditions that I'm reading about are true and what aren't? How do I determine that? It's very clear that he's never considered that before. Now, he'll be critical of things like the Bible as we have it today, just like Joe Rogan will be, And I pick on Joe Rogan because you will remember, and this is where I heard about Billy Carson from Joe Rogan, because he was on Joe Rogan's podcast several months ago. And I listened to some of the clips of Billy Carson, and I was like, a lot of things he said I'd never heard about before, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, that's wild, and that sounds really dumb. All due respect. Just especially when you're talking about the Bible, that's when I knew, yeah, that's not true. Like, no, that's no way. That's no. This guy's got it all wrong. But he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and then he's gone basically. I never heard from him for another several months until recently, last couple of days. I heard that he debated an actual Christian scholar and historian and got smoked. And I was like, well, I gotta check this out. So I did, and yeah, it was a bloodbath. As Wise Disciple said, he put it very bluntly. It was a bloodbath. It was just absolute, just destruction of this guy. And it was a demonstration that a lot of what Billy Carson claimed was just flat earthism. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but it just was. It really, really is. There's nothing scholarly about it. When I saw clips of him on several other podcasts just going through this mythology, I'm just like, what in the world? I mean, this, and he's talking about, this is where Star Wars gets a lot of stuff. Well, there you go. Star Wars, fantasy, fantastical stuff. There you go. But anyways, went off on a rabbit trail there. But I pick on Joe Rogan because when Joe Rogan had Billy Carson on his program, Billy Carson's talking about a lot of the stuff. Joe Rogan's just kind of sitting there and just going, oh, man, oh, it's interesting. Yeah, and just sucking it all in. And the reason why Joe Rogan does is because his worldview accepts that data. It accepts that information because Joe Rogan has a particular worldview that is similar to Billy Carson's. And Joe Rogan will never, at least as far as I can tell, doesn't really ever admit this. But you listen to him long enough, you can see what his worldview perspective is. Which is basically, he seems to have this perspective, or at least he's very sympathetic towards this perspective that, first of all, the ancient people, the ancient world, the days of Abraham, Noah, all that stuff, were unintelligent, pretty much primitive cavemen. And Now, you run into problems with that theory when you start considering all the incredible things they built. It's like, how in the world did they do this, you know? And so you ask the question, these people who are complete buffoons, cavemen, utterly unsophisticated compared to us today, were able to create things that today baffle us this far into the 21st century. How in the world could that be? And so what you do is you come up with theories about how this could be. I remember one guy Joe Rogan was talking to, they were speculating about how Moses, who wrote Genesis, as far as we know, could have known, or just basically the writer of the Bible, or the of Genesis, how he knew about, how he was so accurate about the origins of the universe before most people in modern time believed. For a long time, the universe has just kind of always been there, has been a theory. And of course, the Bible has been claiming from the beginning that the universe was created, came into existence at one point. There was a time when the universe wasn't, and now it is, created by God. And so they're speculating about how the author of Genesis could have known so much about this. And then they just basically came to the conclusion, sort of like, what if, it was like these people came into contact with these beings, that's what they like to call it, beings, who were highly advanced, basically aliens. Let's just be real. We'll call it what it is, but basically aliens. How in the world could they have done that? Well, it could have been aliens who kind of communicated to them. They came into contact with these people and they told them about the universe, things that they didn't understand. And I'm just sitting there listening to this whole thing. I'm just like, what? Why is it so hard to believe? It could be this. Maybe it was this. It could be. And I'm just sitting there like, if I was sitting in that room, I'd be like, what it also could be? What if Joe, God talked to these people? The creator of the universe talked to these people and told them how the universe was created, and they wrote it down. Like, why is that so hard to believe? Well, I'll tell you why. Because Joe Rogan has a particular worldview that does not allow that data to exist. It does not accept that data. When your presuppositions, that's the way presuppositions function. They accept data that's coincide with the presupposition. They reject data that challenges the presupposition. That's normal. That's every single human being is guilty of that. I'm guilty of that in many ways. I try not to be, and that's why I always try to be aware of my assumptions, so that then I can be consciously thinking about, when I hear something that conflicts with what I believe, I can consciously begin to reflect, self-reflect, and ask myself, am I being consistent? Am I right? Am I wrong? How do I, all that stuff. But you see it even further when Joe Rogan has other guests, like Stephen Myers, on his program. He had him on a couple months ago. Stephen Myers, Christian scientist, and he is a firm believer in intelligent design. He gave great cases for intelligent design, and I've listened to a lot of his stuff. It's been very, very helpful. And Joe Rogan is like borderline interrogating Stephen Myers at one point in the debate. He's really challenging him and just, trying to poke holes in, maybe Joe Rogan wouldn't put it that way. Maybe he's just trying to put it as like I'm just asking questions, and that's maybe the way he's, but it's very clear that Joe Rogan is somewhat disturbed by a lot of the things that Stephen Myers is claiming. And, he's got to push back on it somehow. But see, he doesn't ever do that with guys like Billy Carson, because he accepts presuppositionally the perspective Carson is coming from. Guys like Joe Rogan like that theory because it coincides with his particular worldview, his view of the world. And what is his view of the world? Well, at the very least, he's agnostic. He seems to be sympathetic towards the theory of evolution, that we are evolved from, primate-like creatures, all that stuff. And yet, evolutionists are discovering right now, we got a bit of a problem with like origins of human life. How in the world do we explain that? Even Richard Dawkins has entertained the idea of ancient aliens. because that's how desperate a lot of them are these days. Like, they got to figure out some way to answer this. Like, we gotta figure this out. So what if it was aliens? What if aliens made us? Like, they started our whole human race. That doesn't actually solve anything. It just kind of kicks the can down the road, because where do the aliens come from? But it is what it is. But anything to go just not accept the worldview that Joe Rogan, says he was a part of as a kid. And look, I think I've heard Joe Rogan explain, his childhood somewhat, and I feel bad for him. What he experienced was not true Christianity, but unfortunately, it might have traumatized him in a way that prejudiced Joe Rogan against it. And as he gets older, he's hardening more and more in that defiance against the religion he supposedly grew up with. And that has an effect on you as you get older. And the older you get, the more hardened you are against it. And it's kind of sad, but we still pray for Joe Rogan. So anyways, but when we come to Billy Carson, so you see what happened. This is how presuppositions function. When they go unattended, when you're not aware of them, they begin to just function, and they take complete control, and you don't even realize it. And you begin to use arguments that otherwise would not work, and you reject other arguments that it's called being inconsistent argumentation, when you're trying to defend a position rather than the truth. You're accepting. You've already prematurely accepted a particular thesis or idea, and then once you've already accepted it, you now set about to prove it. That's how it typically works. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Scientists do that all the time. They have this what if, I think that this is what's going on, and so they begin to do their research, they begin to do their experiments. But typically what happens is, over time, after you do a lot of experiments and you begin to realize if it's not working, you typically are going to go, it seems like the theory didn't work after all. And so you reject it. You go, okay, well, it's not working. After all of my investigation, everything, I've vetted everything. I've been consistent across the board, and I have discovered that the evidence just does not support this thesis. And so now I'm going to reject the theory. But then you can also turn around and just go, nope, this has got to be true, and you're going to do whatever you're going to do. You're going to manipulate data. You're going to do everything, and you may not even realize you're doing it, but you're going to do it, and to get the outcome that you desire, because you're not fueled by the truth. You're fueled by this obsession with the particular outcome that you want. That's the case with Billy Carson. That's what's going on with Billy Carson, and I can prove it because. When you go back to the actual debates, when Wesley Huff, he asked Billy directly, after Billy starts, talking about, all these things that he believes in, these ancient aliens, ancient societies, and whatever. Wesley starts asking Huff, "What's your methodology by which you determine truth from falsehood? Like, the stories that are true and stories that are false. Like, what's your methodology?" And when you listen to Billy Carson's response, what does he say? Billy basically says, well, my methodology is I get on a plane and I go and I talk to these people. Okay, so let me make sure I get this straight. What you're basically telling me is I get on a plane, I go talk to them, they tell me stories, and I just believe it. That's what you're basically telling me? You just believe it? That's what you're saying. Like, when I heard that, I'm like, this guy clearly has never thought this through. He doesn't do actual scholarly work. He's never thought about this before. It just, and you see him in this video that I have here. He's gonna start saying things like, that the Christians do this, and that's one of the things that these people always do. They like to say that it's those guys who are the ones who just can't accept a certain perspective because of their underlying assumptions. Me, I'm just asking questions. But he's not. He's really not. And you're gonna see that. So, but that really like struck me. I was like, what, you know? And you can, and in this video, his damage control video, I mean, he straight up just says, and if you don't know that he's starting to sue, he wants to sue the guy who did the podcast, and he also wants to sue Wesley Huff. So, and he's suing them, and unlike what Billy does, I'm gonna be just completely open and up honest, because if you ask me why is he suing them, because a lot of people are saying, well, he's suing them because he lost the debate. I mean, that's probably true, but let's think about it from Billy's perspective. He thinks that he was duped. He thinks that he was misled. He claims to have the text messages to prove it. Okay, we'll wait for that to come out. Whenever that does, we'll hold our judgment on that. But you're going to see that I'm not too confident in Billy's claims, and I'll show you why in the video that I have here. Why I think a lot of what Billy is saying now, in terms of his lawsuits, claims, is probably not true. In other words, his credibility has been severely damaged by the debate and by the follow-up here. But he says in this whole thing, he actually says, I think I actually have it right here. So I guess we'll start playing some of this here, and we'll just kind of comment on it. Again, I'm using Life Reacts commentary on it, so you're gonna hear him jump in here. And he has music playing. It's not my music. I don't think it's Carson's music playing, because other times Life Reacts will pause Billy Carson's video and the music's still playing. So it's probably on Life Reacts end, but it's not mine. Anyway, in fact, I'm wondering, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I shouldn't play it because of the music. Maybe I should just read the transcripts. So if I go here, show transcripts, I gotta scroll down quite a lot because it is a long video. So we're gonna go down here. I wanna read what Billy is saying. And maybe play like a couple clips. I think you can play a slightly, a couple seconds of it, and that's fine. So, let's go here real quick.
The Sinai Bible, Jesus was crucified. Well, that doesn't exist in the Sinai.
Yeah, so this is where Billy says that he was, he never actually said that Jesus was not crucified. He said it's like, it's possible that he wasn't. So let me go back.
Well, that in the Sinai Bible, it appeared that Jesus had never been crucified.
See, this is in Billy's video, his newest video, where he's trying to damage control. He says it appeared that Jesus had never been crucified. That's not what he said in the past. In the past, he just straight up said in the Sinai Bible, which actually isn't a thing, but in the Sinai Bible, it says that Jesus was never. It never says that Jesus was crucified. He says that in various other podcasts. He's on record saying that. Now, you have here is the Bible, the Sinai Bible. In the Sinai Bible, it's hard to read the transcripts because it follows everything he says, and he's just mouthing all, just saying words. And anyways, but it appeared that Jesus had never been crucified, and he said, "I said it's quite possible that Jesus was never crucified." And then he goes on to say, "Not once anywhere." This is Billy talking. Not once anywhere did he claims not once anywhere did he say Jesus was never crucified. He said it was quite possible that Jesus was never crucified, or he might not have been crucified, depending on. And this is what he says. Listen to what he says right after he makes those sweeping claims. Depending on what podcast I was on. That's how he kind of covers himself. I think he realizes mid-sentence, wait a minute, I have actually said that. So I'm going to basically catch myself a little bit and say, yeah, depending on what podcast I was on. Depending on what podcast you're on, but well, you said it before on some podcast. You're admitting you have actually said that directly, that Jesus was never crucified. Man, it's kind of sad that I really want to play this. it would just be easier for me if I just kind of played these, but or played the video. I'm trying to think here. Let me just go. Oops, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Go back here. Sorry. Oh. I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and play it, and we'll see what happens.
I said it's quite possible that Jesus was never crucified. Huh? Not once anywhere that say Jesus was never crucified. It says quite possible that Jesus was never crucified, or he might not have been crucified, depending on what podcast I was on.
So there's his cover. It's depending on what podcast I was on, because he knows he's lying. He knows. Wait a minute, that's not actually true. So now he's got to backtrack that, or he's got to give himself an escape hatch out of that. So when it's brought up, he goes, "Well, I said, depending on what podcast I was on, I added that at the very end because I realized, wait a minute, that's probably not actually true." So you got that. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit.
This is in textual context, translation choices, and theological interpretations. And so here's the textual variations. Scholars estimate that there are.
But so he's talking about here. Billy Carson is talking about in this section. He keeps talking about this the Codex Sinaiticus, however you want to say it, and the King James Bible. He always does this. He always just. And by the way, let me just. I have to say this. I forgot to mention this before we got started with the video. He said he's in this video. He's making excuses about why he just did really poorly in the debate. He said, well, I just got out of the hospital. I was feeling horrible. And he actually, in the video, he actually looked terrible. He did not look well at all. So I'm not denying that that's true. What I will say, what I would say is that regardless of how you were feeling, you chose to get up out of bed and go do that podcast. You chose to do that while you were not feeling well. So that's on you, sir. You're an adult. Take responsibility for your actions, okay? That's not Wesley's fault. That's your fault. That's on you. But the other thing I wanted to say was he's claiming that he messed up, he misquoted, and I guess he's trying to imply because his brain was scrambled or something like that. I just wasn't thinking straight. I was just stressed out and everything. So what are you saying? Because you've the very answers you get, the claims you made in the debate with Wesley Huff, you claimed on other podcasts. So are you misquoting over there? Are you sick over there too on those podcasts? I mean, and Wesley Huff, like he was already ready for all this stuff because he'd been responding to Billy Carson's stuff for months, if not years. I don't know exactly how long. But he knew these were coming. Wesley was ready for these a mile away. So because, Mr. Carson, you were saying these things on other podcasts for years. And so I'm a little confused. Were you sick then? And because you said the same things then that you did on the podcast on this debate. But we all know the answer. We know the actual answer. He's making excuses. His head was, he may not have been well, but he knew what he was saying. And it was the same stuff he'd been saying over and over again. The difference is he actually came up against a Christian scholar who's done research on these things in ways that he has not even touched the surface on. Because Billy Carson, like we said, starts with a particular perspective, and then he sets out to prove it. So then he accepts data that agrees with it and rejects data. Not only that, but it's very clear to me that Billy Carson never even took the time to look into potential objections to this particular theory. He didn't even take the time to look into it. because he has this worldview where there's this fascination with the occult of many people. I guess because, you know, mainline Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, we all grew up with it, right? You know, it's always around us. And we grew out of that. We rebelled against that, right? Joe Rogan is kind of like this. And that's one of the reasons why Joe Rogan accepts many other theories other than Christianity, because he grew up with it. It was kind of like this twisted form of Roman Catholicism. But, and so naturally, as you get older, you want something different, something unique. And that Christian stuff, I grew up with that stuff. I heard about it all. I just don't believe it. I want something new, something cooler. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people are getting into all kinds of other, frankly, pagan worldviews and stuff. It is actually pagan in origin. That's human nature. We just want to do something different. And this stuff, this alien stuff, is different. These different gospels that no one's ever heard of. Oh, and it's different. And that's what makes it intriguing. That's why people like it. But there's a reason why it's typically not in mainline Christianity. And Billy Carson got knocked upside the head in a realization of that fact. But anyways, I hope I'm okay with playing some of this stuff here.
Approximately 14,800 differences between the Codex and
I'm going to skip ahead. There's something.
Biblical Archaeology Review.
So anyways, going back to the King James and Sinaiticus thing. He keeps raising this point as if it means anything. Sinaiticus, or the Sinai Bible, according to him, and it doesn't mention the crucifixion. Whereas, the King James says it. The King James version of the Bible says it, but the Sinaiticus does not mention it. And Wesley, of course, proved that it actually does. But regardless of that, it's like he's pretending. Why does the King James matter? Why is that significant? I mean, it's Sinaiticus is older than the King James. King James, compared to what we have, is pretty late in Christian church history. 1611. There's a maybe a millennium or so of church history before that. Which Sinaiticus is, of course, a part of. But even that is not even... and again, this to me demonstrates that Billy Carson just doesn't know anything about the world of Christianity, its history, and none of that. Even when I heard him on the Andrew Schultz show describing, sort of attempting to describe Christian doctrine on salvation, he even got that terribly wrong. It's just very obvious. He does not spend any time thinking about what Christians actually believe. None whatsoever, because he doesn't care. He's not interested in it. He's interested in, like I was saying, he's interested in all these cool different things, these newer ideas that nobody talks about. Because, and another one of the reasons why people dive into those things, I forgot to mention this, I'm all over the place, I'm sorry, but another one of the reasons why people like to do this stuff, because diving into things like these conspiracy theories that Billy Carson gets into about ancient aliens, it makes them feel like they're above other people. You guys just believe all the standard hardline Christian stuff, that boring stuff we all grew up with and everybody's tired of now. It's like me when I listen, I'm sorry for my dad here, but I grew up on Journey, and so much, my dad played Journey so much that I am sick and tired of it today. I cannot stand Journey for that very reason. And I tell people, look, all due respect to Journey, their music is solid, but I've heard it so much growing up that I'm done. I've heard enough Journey for the rest of my life. Don't want to hear another Journey song for as long as I live. But it's like that, you grew up with it, and it's so much, and it's so much a part of your culture and your world that you want to rebel against it. But rebelling against it does not mean it's false. It just means that you just grew tired of it. So there's all this claim about the King James, as if that matters, as if it means anything. It doesn't mean anything. And it just shows that Billy Carson does not spend a lot of actual time studying Christian history. It's a very complex history. And so when he runs into a Christian scholar who actually does study the stuff, well, he just walks right into a freight train. And it's really, really bad for him. That's the problem with a lot of these people. They not only do they not investigate like Joe Rogan, but they don't care. They just don't care. They just don't want to. They're done with this for whatever reason. Not for any reasons that are justifiable, but just for some reason they're just I don't care for this. Sometimes, and I just kind of wish they would just admit it. Just like, honestly, at the end of the day, dude, I just don't care about Christianity. I don't spend time in that world. I don't care about it. It's just not my thing, whatever. At least they're being honest, But when they sit there and they try to pretend like they're experts on these subjects, it's like, now you're being a joke. So, all right.
That doesn't prove any. What is this?
They based 100,000 videos, and I do mean 100,000 videos of complete foolishness off of this information.
What did that prove? First of all, if we go to nationally pose that what the appearance, how him being, was he
possible to consider factors that may have influenced her?
All right, so
was explicitly pressured into.
So we're gonna get into now. I think Billy Carson actually wrote this. Maybe he actually wrote this. So I can read some of this stuff here because he's reading this. Billy Carson is, and this is about this Karen Lay King, who I just learned about today. By the way, I did a little bit of research into it. Her finding the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, supposedly an ancient papyri about Mary being the wife of Jesus. And she wrote a book about it. Again, she called it the Gospel of Mary. I think it's what she called it, Mary Magdalene. And then it turns out, and she's like this professor in this prestigious school. So she's part of the academic world. And it turns out that this gospel was actually just forged. It's just a fraud, or the evidence is fairly overwhelming that it's a fraud. And so she was pressured. She was basically, the academic world told her, like, look, this, and it basically tanked her career, writing a book about this, promoting this whole thing. It just, when you do something like that, when you embrace something that is so clearly fraudulent, and then you embrace it as fact, and you in the academic world, that does serious damage to your reputation. That's why the academic world has such high standards, and it is very important to recognize the academic world. So she was pressured as a result of this to recant, you might say, maybe that's not the right word, but to basically come out and just admit, look, this was a forgery. This whole thing that you based so much of your career on, you banked a lot of your career on, was not even true. It's a forgery. You've been duped. And she tried for a while to fight against what the academic world was saying, until she finally eventually went, okay, yeah, it was probably, forged. I apologize for that kind of thing. So that's the essential story behind the whole thing. But I think this was back in like 2020, I think somewhere around there. I read a few articles on it today about the whole situation. But now what I want to do is I want to listen to Billy Carson explain the situation. And this is really useful because this helps us understand once again how the assumptions in it are working in his mind, and how they dictate the way he interprets the information. What information he leaves out, what information he embraces, and embracing that particular information and rejecting this particular information, he forms a narrative. The brain just does this. It's like automatic. You're doing whatever you can to affirm the theory. Subconsciously, you're doing that. You're automatically just this. I gotta prove this. That's what you do. So he reads here, it is possible that Karen King was explicitly pressured into stating that the gospel of Jesus' wife was likely forgery. By the way, Billy Carson is doing this because he's been running around for years claiming that Jesus had a wife, according to the Gospel of Mary, which was, again, published and made popular by this Karen King character. So if it can be proven that Karen King's entire thesis, her whole position on the matter is false, then Billy has been promoting a false narrative for years. And that's why he has to defend it. So he says it is possible that Karen King was explicitly pressured. So, and this is what he says. It's possible. And this is his MO. I don't want to go ahead of myself. So let's just read it here. It is possible that that Karen King was explicitly pressured into stating that the gospel of Jesus' wife was likely a forgery. It is possible to consider factors that may have influenced her acknowledgement of the fragment's questionable authenticity. Scholars, especially those in high-profile positions, can face significant academic, institutional, and public scrutiny, which might feel like pressure to some degree. So he goes into academic pressure. The academic community largely dismissed the fragment after critical analysis revealed it was likely modern forgery. Reputable scholars published detailed examinations, and institutions emphasize rigorous standards. This overwhelming consensus could have created a sense of academic obligation for King to align with the evidence. So he's naming all these possible kind of why she eventually kind of recanted the whole Gospel of Mary thing. 1. Public and media scrutiny. After the story gained international attention, there was considerable media focus on King and her research. Investigative reports, such as the Atlantic's expose, further cast doubt on the papyrus. This public spotlight might have added external pressure to respond transparently. 2. Institutional and professional expectations. Harvard Divinity School and other academic institutions would naturally be cautious about potential reputational damage. It's conceivable that indirect pressure arose from the need to maintain the integrity of these institutions. 3. Personal integrity. King's acknowledgement that the evidence presses in the direction of forgery could also stem from her commitment to scholarly rigor rather than external coercion. Let's listen to him talk about it. And again, I hope I don't get flagged for this.
Stating that the gospel of Jesus' wife was likely a forgery. It's possible to consider factors that may have influenced her acknowledgement of the fragment's questionable authenticity. Scholars, especially those in high-profile positions, can face significant academic, institutional, and public scrutiny, which might feel like pressure. And it could put pressure on them to some degree. So, what they're saying is when people are doing these things, when people are, coming up with discoveries that could upturn the apple cart, it actually puts a lot of pressure on the Christian community, because they have this mainstream ideology that they don't want to bend or break because it's been in place for eons.
So you hear that. So there you have Carson claiming. His claim is that, so again, this is the narrative that he's trying to paint. The academic community pressured Karen to admit or just succumb to the pressure. And, basically he won't say it, but he's implying being bullied into saying, okay, yeah, this whole thing was a fraud, and I apologize. And his reason for that could be a possibility is because the world of Christianity has this particular consensus of the way things are, that they just, it's been going on for eons, as he said, and so they don't. And he says eons, by the way. Could have just said 2,000 years, So anyways, but it just that just makes me wonder. Does he even know how long Christianity is? Anyways, so it could be, like that's it's the Christians who have this particular perspective, that they just won't let go of. See what it's again. Remember what I said. This is what you do. He has the forbidden knowledge. He has this particular perspective, and the Christians just don't want to accept it, And so what they do is they suppress information that could contradict it. Of course, now sit back and think about this. Could that be true? Yeah, that could be true. Or it could be that the academic community investigated this papyri or papyrus, and using the same methods that they use on everything else, they applied it to this and found out, this is not actually, this did not exist during the time of the apostles. No, this is a forgery. Again, go back to the Joe Rogan thing. When Joe Rogan's in one of his guests, they were just trying to speculate, how could Genesis, the author of Genesis, have known that all this incredible accurate information about the universe so far back then, when they're just primitive people, so dumb and didn't know anything. They were so scientifically inadequate, so we gotta, maybe it could be this, it could be this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. Or maybe God just was communicating to them. Maybe that was actually happening and they were actually telling the truth. No. That can't be. No. So you see what this is. This is the operating assumptions operating without them even thinking about it. And so what Billy Carson does is he forms a narrative. He doesn't, you tell him, he just throws all this stuff out here. Just the Christian world just can't accept a different perspective than what has been accepted as the norm, the orthodox view for eons. Okay, maybe we can grant that could be possibly true. I would ask you to show how the evidence of that, and I don't think there is any. I would, bet my paycheck on that there is no significant evidence that that's actually what happened. But it could also just be that they actually investigated the papyrus and found out that, this isn't real. So because of that, you need to, for your reputation's sake, you need to stop this. You got to stop this, Karen. This is bad because we all know that this is false. This is a forgery. Just look at it. And actually, the reason why she eventually admitted it, because she accepted the evidence. It had nothing to do with what Carson is implying here, sort of like in an incognito way. So let's go back a little bit.
On the Christian community, because they have this mainstream ideology that they don't want to bend or break because it's been in place for eons.
Mm-hmm. See, there it is.
And what kind of academic pressure can they put on you? Now I'm going to go into some actual recent, or not recent, but fairly recent, in my terms of understanding history and dates and times and geological timescales, evidence of this happening before.
Or it could just be.
And I'm not saying this thing is 100% real. What I'm telling you is I'm giving you a different...
Did you hear, I don't hear Life Reacts. He just said the same thing I just said. Or it could just be a forgery. And they told her, it's a forgery and you need to stop promoting this. Because it damages the reputation of the academic community, which is kind of important. The structural integrity is very important. You're going to see why that's important here in a moment.
Perspective, which is what I always do.
So let's go back one more.
History and dates and times and geological timescales, evidence of this happening before.
Or it could just
be. And I'm not saying this thing is 100% real. What I'm telling you is I'm giving you a different perspective, which is what I always do.
So you hear that? This is what, again, another one of the things that Billy Carson does. And people like him. Look, I'm just going to say this. I got to say it. This is snake oil salesman stuff. So what you do is you offer this perspective. But what you do it in a way that goes, look, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just offering a perspective. I'm just saying, hey, here's an idea. Here's something that could be true. I'm not claiming to believe it. I'm not claiming that it's true. It's just something to consider. No, he's not. No. Billy's not doing that at all. He believes this. And he wants you to believe it too. How do we know that? He wouldn't have made this video. He wouldn't have done all his life's work the way he's done it if he just was offering another perspective. And that's it. And made all the absolute claims that he made, like claiming, the Sinai Bible, Jesus was never actually crucified in that. And that came before the King James Bible. He would never, just straight up said that. Because if he's just offering another perspective, he would have said it in very different ways. He would have said, there's contemplations about this, so let me put it this way. I have, in my church, I have a different eschatological belief than my congregation. They're premillennial dispensationalists. I am not. I'm more of the post-mill side. If someone, I actually had one time a young person come up to me and ask me questions about Revelation, which I was like, oh boy, how do I do this? What I did was, and I've done this, I taught my sister, she would ask me questions about eschatology. I just I go, look, here's the thing. There are different views of eschatology. There are, millennialists, post-mill, pre-mill, dispensationalists, all, these perspectives. These guys believe this, and these guys believe this. These guys believe this. These are the views that they have, and this is why they believe this. This is why they believe this, and I could just go in and explain all this stuff, and basically say, so that's kind of the idea. I leave it up to you to decide which one you think is accurate, more accurately explains the biblical data. That's more like, look, I'm not telling you what I believe. If you ask me what I believe, I'd tell you, but I don't want to just impose what I believe. I want to open your mind to the ideas, the different perspectives on this subject. And so I will go into, I'll talk about that. So you got this over here, but there's also this over here, and these guys say this, and then there's also, but that's not what Billy's doing. He's disguising the fact. So in other words, he's deceiving. I would say, I believe, and again, I think it can be proven because of the simple fact that if he was actually just offering another perspective, he wouldn't be having to go to these lengths to defend his work, because his reputation is on the line now. He said these things, he believes these things, he means these things when he says them, and so now he has to defend it because it got blown to smithereens by an actual Christian scholar, and now he's got to figure out how to address these things. So the idea that he's just gone, I'm just offering a different perspective, that's all I'm doing, is just total, no, you're not. No, he's not. And don't believe him when he says stuff like that. When people say things, when people like him say that stuff, what they want to do, they just want to kind of crack the surface of your worldview. They can just crack it a little bit with the, did God really say kind of thing, what the serpent did. And that's what the serpent did, by the way. And that's what the serpent always does. You'll notice with people who just, I've noticed patterns with objections to the Christian faith. One thing they all have in common, so much of the time, sometimes they do just outright just go, no, that's it. But a lot of times what they do is they do this, they go, this is just another option to think about, just a new perspective to consider. And what they want to do is they want you to think that they're not imposing on you. They don't want you to think that they're a threat. That's basically what they're doing. It's the same thing that a lot of predators do, honestly. I'm not trying to say, by the way, I'm not trying to say Billy Carson is a predator. I'm not saying that at all. But a lot of predators do the same kind of tactic. They want to kind of groom you. They want to kind of cozy up to you. They want you to feel comfortable around them, that I'm not a threat. So they won't just straight up, try to go after you, They want you to cozy up to them and their perspective or whatever. That's a lot of what you see here. He doesn't want to appear as though he's just straight up murking Christianity. He wants, because if he does that, he knows, hey, that's not gonna allow me to kind of get my foot in the door. Two, it could also happen that somebody is gonna murk me. Which is what happened with Wesley. So that then he can just kind of say, well, look, I wasn't saying that it was true. That was just something to think about, that's one of the reasons why people do this kind of stuff. So anyways.
Academic pressure. The academic community largely dismissed the fragment after critical analysis revealed it was likely a modern forgery. Reputable scholars published detailed examinations, and institutions emphasized rigorous standards, and this overwhelming consensus could have created a sense of academic obligation for King to align with the evidence. She was
Oh no, I lost my Wi-Fi connection.
Gung-ho for a very long time and fought against saying it was fake.
Weird.
That's an absolute fact. She fought against it initially.
VPN.
After the story gained international attention, there was considerable media focus on King and her research. A lot of pressure. Sounds like defendant number one's text messages. The pressure he was under. Sounds familiar to you?
So basically what he's saying is he's posing this source, he posed the source, and he doesn't know if it's true or not, but what he's going to say is that there's a possibility that this could be true, there's a possibility that it could be false, but I'm also going to use the source. And when
it is basically saying, I'm not saying it's true, but I'm just going to go ahead and stick with it anyway. Again, damage control, when you know that you got blown to smithereens, what you do is you just go, well, there's these people say this about it, and these are scholars, right? These are in the academic community. Now, of course, I gotta mention that a lot of their opinions got blown to smithereens too, but hey, still might be true. Could be. I don't know what to say to that. That's anyway. I don't know. Just
people are telling me that this source have earlier writings where people made statements about Christ that was still, if someone actually did write this in that specific time period, which I think
was published detailed examination institution overwhelming. Okay, so here it goes. The public scrutiny and media. After the story gained international attention, there was considerable media focus on her research. And investigative reports such as Atlantic's expose further cast doubt on the papyrus. So an outside source came and said, no, we can't. They got pressure, and they came with the external pressure and said, no, we can't let this go out. This can't be.
And so,
known as accurate.
Okay, that's true. But you have to ask the question, Billy, why did the external pressure come in? Because of the academic pressure you just mentioned, because the academic community realized that this is a forgery, this is not real, this is false, this was not written by any of the apostles, it's just there's no historical backing to it whatsoever. And therefore, because of that, Karen was pressured to recant these claims. But he's not gonna, again, the evidence is clear. But Billy's not going to accept the evidence. He's going to stick with the sliver of possibility that it could potentially be true, rather than stick with the overwhelming evidence that it is not true. See, that's what worldview does. It's not about what truth is. It's not about the evidence. It's not about the facts. It is about an idea. And I'm going to defend the idea to the last sliver of hope. That's what it's about.
This public spotlight might have added external pressure to respond transparently. Institutional and professional expectations. Harvard Divinity School and other academic institutions would naturally be cautious about potential reputational damage, and it's conceivable that indirect pressure arose from the need to maintain the integrity of these institutions. Sound familiar? NASA making up lies about different things that they do. Yeah, they tell the truth in some things, but a lot of things they tell are obfuscated or lied about.
So that's where I wanted to really make something comment here about the irony of this statement from Billy Carson. It's ironic. Why is it ironic? Because Billy Carson is also lying. He lied about his claims that I didn't say that Jesus was crucified. I said it's possible that he wasn't, depending what podcast I was on. He said it. He's on record saying it over and over and over again. And his work was just completely blown to smithereens by Wesley Huff. And now he's doing the damage control. But here he is saying, hey, it sounds familiar. It sounds like NASA, right? All the lies that they told, and they say some true things, but because of the lies that they told, therefore, we shouldn't really trust them, right? Billy, that's the whole point. That's the point. The sources that you're drawing from to make your claims are known to be forged, not authentic. They're just not. And you have been promoting them for years. And when it's been called out, turns out your work is, for the most part, maybe not for the most part, but a lot of it, again, I'm not familiar with everything, but so much of your work is actually not based on truth or fact. That damages your reputation, sir. And so what do you do? Do you do what Karen King tried to do for years? Tried to fight tooth and nail for its authenticity, but eventually she had to just go, yeah, it's not true. And I am embarrassed. I apologize. Or are you going to double down and further destroy your reputation? Just come out and say, yeah, man, I screwed that up. I messed that up. I take full responsibility for that. And I'm going to do better. But see, that was to me, like when I heard that, I was like, see, Billy is missing. He's just missing it. He's calling out NASA for lying. I don't know. I don't know much about this stuff. I really don't care, to be honest with you. What the NASA such stuff is, but whether it's true or not, the simple fact is that's what Billy's been doing, and as a result, his reputation is on the line. This is what happens when you're telling lies and you are, just completely misinterpreting the data. You are leaving out facts, big ones, massive facts, to promote a narrative. Then you get called out on it, and then you really begin to realize how important it is for professional integrity. And that's really what's behind all of this. That's at the end of the day, that's what's going on. Again, Billy can complain all he wants about, I was ambushed, however true that is. I don't know how true that is. We don't really know, not yet anyway. Maybe we'll find out eventually. But at the end of the day, you chose to go on there. You repeated the same things that you said over and over again, and then claimed, I was sick, I wasn't feeling good, so I didn't say, I misquoted things. Yeah, but you quoted those things numerous times on other platforms where you weren't sick. So, it's just, again, when you're actually examining and being consistent, you realize, there's something funky here. He's being inconsistent. He's making up excuses. It's just bad all around. And anyways, so those are some of the comments I wanted to make. I got within an hour. I didn't want to go a whole hour, but it is what it is. Is there a little bit left?
And other organizations within government and everywhere else, especially when you're talking about anything doing with government and religion. Those two things are filled with the most lies and obfuscation. And
again, the irony here, just refusal to accept responsibility that he drew from sources that are just verifiably false. And then accusing others of lying and destroying their own reputations and demonstrating that they can't be trusted. I mean, it's amazing. It's remarkable to see that. I'm just stunned at the lack. Again, like I said in the beginning of this is what happens when you're not self-consciously aware of your own assumptions, your own worldview, and seriously considering. And I liken it to chess. When you play chess, one of the number one reason why people lose chess games is because they're only thinking about what they want to do. They're not thinking about what their opponent wants, or the other side, you might say, is looking to do. You have to consider what they want to do before you make your move. And most people don't do that. That's what Billy Carson's big mistake was. Never even considered, hey, if I accept this theory, what's the Christian response? What do the Christians have to say about this? Let me go talk to an actual Christian scholar. But no, he just went with the system and got checkmated in just a couple moves. Just walks into a checkmate. And that's what happens. So
oppression, personal integrity. King's acknowledgement that the evidence presses in the direction of forgery could also stem from her commitment to scholarly rigor rather than external coercion. So I'm also saying, hey, maybe she wasn't coerced, or maybe she was.
And there you go. Maybe she wasn't coerced, but maybe she was. What? Again, what's your evidence? Can you not watch that and just see that Billy is just he's trying so hard to fool you and make you think that I'm not actually saying, but I actually am saying, I'm not saying she was coerced, but I think she was coerced, that's kind of what it is. That's what's happening here. And he thinks you're too stupid to not see that that's what he's doing. Apparently that's what he thinks. Either that or he's just a victim of his own lack of self-awareness, which is just on full display in this whole thing. But that's what he do. That's what he does. Again, it's so clear. It is just absolutely clear. This is interesting. I just didn't see this when I watched this. So now Billy Carson has some things on the Council of Nicaea context. Convened by Emperor Constantine, the Council of Nicaea sought to establish doctrinal unity in Christianity, leading to significant decisions about the official biblical canon. I don't think that that's what happened at Nicaea. There was talking about doctrinal unity and, on Arianism and stuff like that. I don't know. Biblical canon was not really a major subject in the Council of Nicaea. It's just a fact. Action. Certain texts, such as the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary of Magdalene, and other apocryphal writings were excluded from the Bible. But see, once again, you have to ask, why were they excluded? See, Billy doesn't want to talk about that stuff. Wes pointed that out to him. Wes has videos of him talking about why these were never included. They didn't have any connection to the apostles, any meaningful connection. That's why these these Gnostic works are not in the Bible. That's just the simple fact. They had no connection to the apostles. But you're not going to hear Carson say that. And he's going to demand evidence of us that he would never put on himself. What's Wesley's criteria for determining what's true? I just got on a plane and flew over there and I talked to them. But that's not the standard he holds to Christianity. So there you go. The inconsistencies of methodology. I'm going to be critical of this one, not going to be a whole lot critical of this one, because in his mind, it's about proving a particular perspective rather than finding the truth. Rationale, the council favored texts that aligned with the proto-Orthodox views of the time, suppressing writings that presented alternate interpretations of Jesus' divinity or Christian theology. So there you go again. Once again, see everything here. There is no objective desire to actually learn what happened at Nicaea. There's just none. This is not how you do history. This is not how you do history. This is how you promote a perspective, an idea. And this dude runs around going, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just a perspective. He's lying. He's just absolutely lying. He just doesn't want to be held accountable to the things that he says, so that when you call him out on it, he can just go, well, I wasn't saying it was true. It was just, perspective. So he can just kind of, again, like a snake, just scurry off. Like Homer Simpson into the bushes, just like that, This is not how you do history. When you say things, the council favored texts that align with the proto-Orthodox view. Prove it. Prove that that's what was going on. That's not what was going on. Council of Nicaea was all about Arianism. Okay, well, there are other subjects that were debated, but those were very tertiary stuff. It was primarily about Arianism. And when they debated Arianism, the conclusions they came to were based on what they already knew was Scripture, by the way. It was not the Gnostic Gospels, because, again, everybody knew, as we know today, that there's no connection to the apostles with the Gnostic Gospels. They contradict the teachings of the apostles, which we know we can trace back to the apostles. I mean, these are just facts. The Gnostic Gospels don't. They don't connect to the apostles. And when you really read them, they're very pagan in their origin. When they were debating the issue, it was, and again, Nicaea didn't just kind of just pop out of nowhere. There was infighting already happening with Arianism growing in popularity. You had Athanasius saying, "Hey, this dude's a problem." You get all these guys talking about Arius denying the divinity of Christ, or that Christ is God. That he's claiming that he's a completely separate being from God the Father, and that was a problem because that's not what Scripture was teaching. And so they convened to discuss it once and for all. Constantine's like, "Look, you guys got to figure this out." So he convened the council, and he had nothing to do with the arguments. He just wanted them to figure it out, because Constantine's he's an emperor. He's a political guy. He doesn't have time to get in theological debates. So he needs the churches to unite, because that's very important for him in his empirical expansion. So he's like, "You guys got to get this down. If you guys figure it out, I'll accept whatever is true." And boom, there we go. You guys are the experts here. That's basically what he's saying. You're the experts. Okay, figure it out. That's what happened at Nicaea. And when they debated, it was about what Scripture was saying. It was not about, we've got to suppress this guy because what he's saying is contrary to the proto-Orthodox views. No, that's not what happened. And you can't prove that that's what happened. You can't. Because that is your mind. That is your worldview perspective. Your worldview perspective is rejection of orthodoxy. And so it's the same thing when I talk to cults. They reject the Council of Nicaea, and it's because they start with a particular perspective and then argue backwards into history. They try to read that backwards into history, and it just doesn't work. All right, so impact. These decisions helped shape the New Testament as we know it, but sidelined diverse early Christian perspectives, limiting the theological spectrum. See, there it is again. This is straight up the serpent in the garden. What Wesley, again, remember what I said earlier, what Wesley wants to do, he just wants to sow a little bit of doubt in your acceptance of orthodoxy, what has always been known as Christianity. And I would say, if you were to say, "Well, Chase, what are you trying to say? You're just saying we should just believe blindly what so-called orthodoxy has been for thousands of years?" I would say no. I would say, I want you to ask questions. I want you to do the investigations. And I'm like, yeah, do it. Go question the Council of Nicaea. Question all these things. And I invite that because I believe that if you are truly seeking the truth, you will come to recognize these things. Orthodoxy is not orthodoxy because these guys declared it was. Orthodoxy is orthodoxy because the Bible teaches it. And all the men of those days were just faithfully following what the Bible taught. That's what was going on. And again, this can be shown, this can be demonstrated in the documents that we have of their arguments and their cases for what they believed. Looking up things like Tertullian versus Praxeas, which led to the Council 267, was it? Yeah, that declared Praxeas a heretic because his teachings were not in following with what Scripture taught. Anyways, that was interesting. I didn't see that, but all right. So I got to go. There you have it. My thoughts on the Billy Carson situation went way too long. I apologize. If you stuck around this long, thank you. I have to go, and I want to talk a little bit. Maybe next time there's a couple other things I want to talk about in terms of TV. There's a couple of shows I've been watching with my parents. One of them is, to me, absolutely terrible, overrated, and is woke garbage disguised as great writing. The other one is actually really, really good, and I would like to really talk about it in my next video. So, lessons to be learned from this whole thing. Soli Deo Gloria. God bless. Bye.